everybody. Thanks, Colleen, and welcome to everybody for attending this webinar. Thanks for joining. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that we are hosting this today from the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of the land. Since summer of last year, some important decisions and work have been completed to move the Sewer Extension South project forward. Today, the project team will provide you with information about what to expect for a future community sewer service in Royston and Union Bay. As you may know, this project is critical to ensuring future protection of Bain Sound and to protecting public health. It will also provide the opportunity for future growth in the Royston and Union Bay communities. At this time, the project team is ready to update the community on project plans to date, including things like phasing, estimated project costs, and how wastewater will be collected in each community. We're excited to share all of the important work that's been completed to date and to get your feedback on key project components. So thanks for being here today again. These plans are made successful by the participation of the community, and your input will be considered by the project team when reviewing options. With that, I'll pass it over to Derry Monteith, our manager of liquid waste planning, and over to you, Derry.
Thank you, James, and hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining. As mentioned, I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes providing an update on some of the progress to date, where we're at, and what's still to come with this project. So let's start with the why. What is the need for a regional sewer service? First, there's a risk to Bain Sound, which is a very important natural area in the Comox Valley. Bain Sound produces approximately 70% of BC's cultured oysters and is a prized feature of the Comox Valley that holds important cultural, economic, environmental, and recreational value in our community. The poorly functioning septic systems in the area pose an environmental and public safety risk. That risk is caused by aging and failing systems. About 60% of the septic systems in Royston and 70% of the systems in Union Bay are more than 25 years old. And there are many occupied properties that do not have a record of a permitted septic system at all. There's also poor conditions in the area. The ground conditions and high density of housing create a greater risk for on-site septic systems to fail. The area is an existing hub with potential for future growth, and there's an existing population that would benefit from servicing, and then once serviced can expect growth. There would also be significant benefit for residents. Connecting to a regional service will provide residents with high quality wastewater treatment, reduced regulatory hurdles, and offer cost savings over the long term. Now I'm just going to hand it over to Melissa from Comox First Nation to speak to how the project will impact the proposed treaty settlement lands should treaty be ratified.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Chache Hathach. Welcome. Melissa Kwok Sister Kwaknan, and that's just introducing myself in Ayajutham. I just wanted to mention a little bit about the treaty. The Comox Treaty has been in the works for just about 30 years. And we have received a partial offer from BC and Canada, and we are moving towards a potential ratification vote. That would put us in a place where if we were to have a treaty, it would bring huge investment to the valley. There would be jobs and opportunities for not just Comox members, but also for anyone in the valley as well. We only have 340 of us roughly, and a lot of opportunity here. So it's an opportunity for everybody, not just Comox. For this project in particular, if Comox is successful in obtaining a treaty, Comox will be a big part of this this project moving forward. And we are happy to see that there is some work here being done. I know personally that this has been being talked about for about 15 years now. So it's great to see some of the work being done, and we're happy to support wherever we can, and looking forward to being a part of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. So this next slide presents a map of the proposed regional system. As you can see, the expanded regional system would add the addition of three main components, 13-kilometer long force main extending from Union Bay to the Courtney pump station, and neighborhood collection systems and pump stations. In the new system, conveyance infrastructure and pump stations will become part of the regional Comox Valley sewer system, with neighborhood collection systems as separate services. So the plan for this project involves a phased rollout, just due to its scale and to keep per property costs reasonable. We understand there's significant public interest in phasing plans for this project, so we've created some maps to highlight the stages. So there are three proposed phases planned for the project. Phase 1A will make up the first phase of work, with phase 1B to follow. And then the timing of any future phases after that is currently unknown. Phase 1A includes approximately 460 properties in the historic cores of Royston and Union Bay, and will see use of the $30 million provincial grant for the project. These areas were selected for initial servicing for three main reasons. First, there is a significant number of aging and at-risk systems in these neighborhoods. They have the greatest environmental need due to lot size and density. And because of this density, they also are the most cost efficient to service. It's also important to know that phase 1A will provide the foundational infrastructure needed for the connection of future phases of the project as communities grow, and that all future connections will benefit from the work in phase 1A. We'd also like to add that the CVRD will be having further discussions with Comox Valley Schools about the value of adding Royston Elementary School to phase 1A. So as you can see on the maps for phase 1B, this will expand servicing to additional portions of the Royston area, as well as the Kilmarnock neighborhood. And in terms of future phases, this will include smaller, lower density neighborhoods where servicing is more expensive, including Gartley Point, Spence Road, and Garvin Road. So the design and location of pump stations has been a really critical part of project planning to date. At this time, pump station locations are still undergoing review and consideration, and the community input will be considered as these decisions are made. So first, let's go over the role of pump stations in the whole system. The wastewater will move through neighborhood collection systems to the pump stations, which will then pump wastewater into the regional force main and carry it into the sewage treatment plant. Pump stations are located generally at lower elevations because they need wastewater to flow to them by gravity. At this stage, the plan is to install 2 pump stations in phase 1A and 1 additional pump station in phase 1B. So in the first map, you'll see the proposed location of the Royston pump station. The committees have recommended it be located at the base of Royston Road on the northwest corner of the Royston Road and Marine Drive intersection. And future plans for this pump station will also consider potential community amenity options like public washrooms and parking. For the Union Bay pump station, location options are currently still under consideration, and the same goes for the phase 1B Kilmarnock pump stations. So now let's talk about collection systems. So first, what is a collection system? It is the system of pipes that collects wastewater from individual properties in a neighborhood into one central location, which is a pump station. The pump station will then push the collected wastewater into the regional sewer force main, which will move the wastewater through Courtney and Comox to the sewage treatment plant. After several review of options of collection systems, a hybrid gravity low pressure sewer system was selected as the preferred option for this project. This is because it offers the most benefits for cost, for technical aspects, and for environmental protection. In the gravity system, wastewater would flow from homes by gravity to local pump stations, and most properties in the service area would be serviced with a gravity connection. For properties that require low pressure sewer infrastructure, this would involve the installation of chambers with grinder pumps on each property. And these pumps would be required at properties where the wastewater plumbing that is exiting the home is lower than the sewer main in the fronting street. And this option was selected to minimize the installation of infrastructure along the foreshore and to limit excavation depths for sewer mains because deeper excavation increases costs. Grinder pumps would be installed at an estimated 40 properties in phase 1A. So these maps highlight the purple boundary areas that indicate which homes would likely require grinder pumps in Union Bay and the Kilmarnock neighborhoods. Union Bay residents, as I mentioned, would see grinder pumps installed in phase 1A and Kilmarnock residents in phase 1B. So on this map, the purple boundary area indicates the homes that would likely need to be installing grinder pumps in the Royston area in phase 1B. Property owners for all areas would be responsible for the installation, operation, and maintenance costs for the grinder pumps. These pumps typically last around 10 to 15 years and cost around $30,000 with an estimated annual operating cost of $40 to $50 for a typical household. And now I will hand it over to Lucy, who will provide us with an overview of the financing of the project and the cost to homeowners.
Thank you, Derry, and welcome everybody. Thank you for being here today. So we know that one of the most important questions for residents is around the cost of the new service. The financing structure makes use of significant provincial grant funding, which the CBRD and the Comox First Nations lobbied for together. It keeps the cost of the collection system affordable for Royston and Union Bay residents, and it spreads the cost of the shared pipe out amongst everyone who will benefit from it. The total project cost is currently estimated at $63 million. The majority of this cost, $44.3 million, is for the regional service pipe and pump stations, and $18.7 million is for the community collection systems. The $30 million provincial grant funding will be split between the cost of the regional sewer pipe and the community collection system. So this graph shows the $26 million of grant funding, which has been allocated now. The remaining $3.6 million will be held in reserve, and it will be allocated when the financial plan for this project is finalized in early 2024. So as shown here also, the partners, Comox First Nations and Union Bay Estates, will contribute funding towards the cost of the regional sewer pipe. Royston and Union Bay residents will pay $5.8 million towards their share of the pipe and their community collection system as part of this first phase of the project. And down the road, when the partners are ready to connect, they will finance their own collection system. There are two categories of costs for homeowners anticipated in this project. The one-time costs, which will vary from home to home and are the responsibility of the homeowner, and ongoing annual costs that will be billed by the province and the CBRD. One-time costs for the homeowners are estimated at $2,500 to $8,500. And this amount includes costs for connecting from the home to the new pipe and decommissioning an existing septic system. We're including the one-time costs as a range because they will vary widely depending on your property and your current system. It's also important to note that these estimates are based on the current market conditions, and they don't include costs for the properties that require the grinder pumps as discussed and mentioned by Derry earlier. In category 2, the annual costs for homeowners are estimated at $1,930 to $2,350 per household. This includes the cost for borrowing to construct the Royston Union Bay share of the sewer pipe and the operating costs for the collection system and regional system. This overall billable amount equates to that $1,400 to $1,700 annually for 25 years, plus $530 to approximately $650 annually, and that's for the ongoing operations and maintenance. The cost for the boring will be billed on your annual provincial property tax bill, and the cost for operations and maintenance will appear on your CVRD quarterly utility bill. We understand that there may be many questions about the costs, and we're happy to answer those questions at the end of the session in the Q&A period. We also understand that the added costs may cause hardship for some households, especially in today's economic climate. There are two programs that could provide financial relief to property owners who are eligible. The first option is the CVRD Septic Deferral Program. And in this program, properties with a type 2 or 3 septic system newer than 5 years may qualify to delay connection to the community sewer for up to 5 years. Eligible homeowners would be required to apply to the CVRD Septic Deferral Program. The details of that program are still being developed and will be shared with the community in the coming year. The second option for homeowners looking to defer cost is through the province of BC's Property Tax Deferment Program. For eligible owners, this could reduce the cost impact for community sewer services by $1,400 to $1,700 annually. And this is the amount that would show up on your property tax bill. So properties can apply for one of two provincial property tax deferment programs. And to learn more about these programs, you can visit the province of BC website and search property tax deferment. Homeowners that qualify for both of these programs, the CVRD Septic Deferral Program and the Property Tax Deferment Program, can delay all costs related to the sewer project by up to 5 years. And now I'll hand it over to Derry to speak to you about regulations for those properties that are not included in this project.
Thank you, Lucy. So the next topic for discussion relates to a new septic regulatory program for electoral areas A, B, and C. The CVRD is currently seeking provincial guidance on options to enact a septic regulatory bylaw and establish a regulatory service for the electoral areas. This would help ensure that septic systems in the electoral areas are properly operated and maintained and are not posing a threat to the environment or public health. This new service could introduce required maintenance, including septic inspections, pump outs, and enforcement measures. The proposed regulatory plan at this time uses a risk-based approach where high-risk electoral area neighborhoods would be prioritized for additional regulatory measures. In terms of next steps for this program, the CVRD Electoral Area Services Committee is currently considering further information on the proposed regulatory program, options to initiate it, and provincial guidance on the process. And if it proceeds, a phased rollout over 5 years has been proposed with an initial focus on the highest priority areas. So you might be wondering how decisions have been made so far and how public input will be treated moving forward. In June 2022, planning for this project was rolled into the Liquid Waste Management Plan, or LWMP, for the Comox Valley Sewer Service. As a result, the project will become an addendum to that plan, and provincial approval of that plan will provide the CVRD with the ability to borrow for the sewer conveyance and collection system infrastructure required to implement the project. But in order to obtain that approval from the province, we must clearly demonstrate the community's contribution to the planning process and how public feedback was incorporated into the final plan. Key to including the community in the planning process was the appointment of a public advisory committee last year, and that committee has had 4 meetings, resulting in the recommendations that have formed the proposed project plan that we are presenting to you today. All of the feedback that you provide today on this webinar and that we collect at our 2 upcoming open houses next week will be shared with the Public Advisory Committee for consideration before it finalizes the draft report, which will also be shared with the community early next year. And this chart on the right illustrates the approval process for that report before it is submitted to the province for final review. So finally, let's discuss the remaining planning timeline and estimated timing for the start of construction. So this summer, the project team will develop the draft addendum report, which will be reviewed by the Public and Technical Advisory Committee, and a final draft plan will be shared with the public in early 2024. The PAC will consider comments from the public before finalizing its recommendations to the steering committee in February 2024, and ultimately, the CVRD board will have final approval of that plan before it is submitted to the province. And at this time, we're estimating provincial approval of the plan in 2025, with construction planned to start in 2026, and phase 1A wrapping up in 2027. So that is the end of the presentation that we have for you today. Thank you again for your time. We really understand that this is a complicated project with lots of moving parts, and we look forward to answering the questions that you have. So with that, I'm just going to pass it back to Colleen, who will facilitate the question period.
Thank you, Derry, and Lucy and Melissa and James for that overview and that presentation. I know there's a lot of information there, and we saw some questions come in as you were working through the slides. Just for people who joined the webinar after my introduction, just a reminder that you can also share a question for the panel by opening up the Q&A little dialog box in the bottom black band of your Zoom screen, excuse me, and then post a question there that we will be able to present to the panelists in this next session. We have about half an hour forward to be able to cover a lot there. I'm just going to move to the next slide for a moment and leave this here for a few minutes. This is where people can go and find more information, both an email and phone number for any further questions, but also the Engage Comox Valley link, which is the CVRD's online engagement platform, and the page there where you can find references and further information, and where this video will be posted at the end. So we have a few questions to get started. Feel free to add some more if you're listening in and you have some that you'd like to have presented to the panel. And I'll start at the top. Derry, this question came in kind of before you got to that slide, but I'm sure it's on people's minds. So maybe we can just revisit it. And the question is specifically around new home builds that have had to put in a type 2 septic system. In this question, the person says that the system cost them about $30,000, and what is there going to be any kind of retribution for this? So maybe you could just visit back to the deferral option to make sure we've kind of covered this question before we move on.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for the question. So as we mentioned, we are proposing a septic deferral program for those properties that have recently installed new systems. And that deferral program is proposed to be effective for 5 years. We are still working out the details of that program, so we will be getting back to the community with additional details in the coming year.
Okay, great. And then the next two questions are pretty similar, actually, and I'm going to go back to our cost slide here. It asks whether the $63 million cost is just for phase 1A, or does it include the full costs of phase 1B as well? And then kind of the reverse of that is whether or not that $5.8 million for Royston and Union Bay residents includes phase 1A or both phase 1A and 1B.
Great, thanks for the question. So all of the costs presented today are for phase 1A. So the $63 million is the total estimated project cost for phase 1A, and the $5.8 million is for neighborhoods connected in phase 1A.
Okay, and then the next one is related to the low pressure systems and the grinder pump costs, and the questioner is asking about whether or not there are going to be options for deferring the payment or grants that could help cover the cost of the grinder pumps. So just so that we're clear, the question poses it as a $30,000 cost for that grinder pump, but I believe you had said that was $3,000 for the grinder pump specifically.
Yeah, that's correct. The estimated cost for those pumps is around $3,000. And at this time, we're not proposing to offer any deferment or grants for those pumps, but certainly something that can be considered by the Public Advisory Committee.
And because we're talking about deferrals or grants, I'm going to skip forward to a question that is on the same topic. So in this one, the question is whether or not there are any other grant or financial help opportunities for affected homeowners, either through the province or the CBRD, that could help help reduce the cost impact for homeowners in these phases.
Yeah, I might just direct that one to Lucy or Kelly to answer.
Thank you. I'll start and Kelly may add. So what we've provided today in the slide are the programs that are available to the community now, those 2 programs that are there at a provincial level. At this time, there aren't any others that we're aware of to help with costs, but we do encourage you for these pieces that are here, that are the responsibility of the homeowners, to reach out to your own banks, your own financial advisors, to see if there's ways to help with whether it's the grinder pumps or the other costs that are scheduled. That would be the responsibility of the homeowner.
Thank you.
Colleen?
Yes, James.
I wonder if I could ask Lucy just to briefly explain the province of BC's property tax deferment program, in case people aren't familiar with it. I don't know that it's a commonly understood or known program.
Okay. Yes, I can do that. And I'm going to start, and Kelly, our senior financial analyst, is very knowledgeable in this space, so I'll have her just tell you a bit more about the details, okay? So I'm just going to start by telling you that there are 2 programs out there for property tax deferment. One that they refer to as their regular program, and this is for homeowners who are 55 years or older. And the second program is one for families. Okay, so those are your 2 options, out there. And Kelly, do you mind? Do you want to take us through a few other particulars about that program, or those programs?
Certainly. So there's 2 different programs, as Lucy mentioned, under the property tax deferment program. There's one for seniors and one for families, property owners with families. They have different criteria. So for the seniors, anybody who is 55 age or older, I know seniors, they qualify under a program where you need to have a minimum of 25% equity within your home. For families with children, it's a minimum of 15% equity in your home. The province of BC is a loan with them, so they will put a lien on your title. They'll work through the criteria with you, and there is no requirement to repay that annually. You can keep deferring your property taxes for as long as you would like to or need to, and the only time you need to repay that loan is when you do any type of a change on your title. So whether it's a refinance, or you're selling your home, or you're adding somebody onto your title, then you would need to repay that loan. Other than that, the loans are a low interest. The province of BC makes it quite easy and very affordable for people that would choose to defer their taxes. The applications are online at the province of BC website, and you apply directly through them, and they have the criteria that they will go through with you. I'm not sure if there's any more questions, if there's anything else I can add.
I think that's helpful, Kelly. Thanks.
Thanks.
Great, thank you guys. I've put up slide 4 that has the maps again of phase 1 and phase 1A and phase 1B, because the next question asks specifically about whether or not there are properties on roads not shown in these maps that would be included in the upgrade. They ask specifically about Washer Road, Beaufort Road, or Spence Road in Union Bay. Terry, are there others that might be included?
Yeah, so these maps show phase 1A and phase 1B, but those properties that are in the designated future phases are not shown on these maps. And I know some of those roads are included in the future phases of the project.
I know also on the Engage Comox Valley page, there is a link to a map where you can search a specific address and it can tell you what phase that property is proposed to land in right now. So that's a great reference for others as well. Okay, the next question is about what could happen if there's an archaeological discovery on private property while trenches are being dug to be able to install pipes and connect to the system. Would a homeowner be responsible for all the related inspections and consultants and expenses, or is there a chance for a blanket archaeological impact assessment for the entire project that could then be managed by the CBRD or the CBRD and KFN in advance of that work?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So there is an archaeological impact assessment being completed as part of the LWMP project for the entire project area. That said, properties within archaeologically sensitive areas will be required to apply for a Comox First Nation Cultural Heritage Investigation Permit. And I'm not sure if Melissa has anything to add to that.
No, just everything you said is correct. There's processes for it. You know, for the most part, I know there's a lot of misconception about what happens if you find remains on your property. The best thing to do is just notify the nation. There will be anybody trying to take anybody's properties. It'll be marked, and if there is some sort of remains or archaeology, we'd probably request to have them put away in our collection. And that's just mark the spot, and that's probably about it, depending on the situation, but there is a process available for that.
Great, thank you. The next question was just asking for me to post slide 8 again, so I've done that. And if that person has another specific question about this slide, please feel free to add it. And I will also remind people that this presentation, both the link to the webinar and the slides, will be available on Engage Comox Valley after the webinar. So if you want to be able to go back and reference any of these maps, they will be available to you for review moving forward. Okay, so then the next question is about the 5-year deferral date. Can you clarify when that 5-year time frame starts? Is it at the start of the project or the date of installation of the septic system or the date of connection? A little bit more information on that, Derry, if you can.
Yeah, so really good questions, and those are the types of questions that we're going to be answering and reviewing as we kind of work out the details of that program. So I guess the answers will be coming in the next year.
And then the next one is about the actual locations for the community collection sewer lines. Have the routes for those pipes been identified yet? And if yes, can they be shared? I believe they are on those maps, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that's right. So the mapping does show the conceptual design for the collection system network. That said, we will be doing more detailed survey work and more detailed design. So those locations could change as project design is progressed.
So just so I'm clear, for example, on the slide I'm on right now, that would be the red line would indicate the community collection systems. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Great. And then the next one is about pump station buildings. Can you explain a little bit more about what those look like, how big they are? And the question is specifically interested in the Royston location on Marine Drive.
Yeah, I might ask Vince to answer that one.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Vince Van Tongeren, environmental analyst here with the CBRD. Yeah, so in regards to the pump station buildings, we're actually looking at two options for types of pump stations to install. One of which would enclose the infrastructure and equipment for the pump station within a small building, a single-story building. Or the other option we're looking at, which would have less visual impact, would be a kiosk-based pump station model. And this would see above ground infrastructure limited to things such as a generator set and kiosks with electrical components for the pump stations.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the next question circles back to the question of cost and who's paying when for 1A and 1B. And so the clarification they're seeking is, do residents in phase 1B pay for the costs of phase 1A, even though their service isn't changing at this time?
Yeah, so residents won't be responsible for paying any costs associated with the project until their neighborhood collection system is built and they are connected to the sewer system. So only phase 1A residents will be paying those initial costs.
Great, thank you. Again, back to our future service areas question and our map, but a question specifically about the Briardale neighborhood. Do you have a sense of what phase or when residents there might see service?
I might direct this one to Vince again.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Derry. Yeah, I believe Briardale is just outside the core area of Royston and would be included in a future phase area.
And just to clarify, we don't have timelines yet set for those future phase areas.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, and then the question about costs for connection. Can you tell us a little bit more about what dictates how much you pay for connection price? I know we talked about kind of those two kinds of costs, the one-time and the annual cost. So maybe we can explain a little bit more about what would cause the variation on the one-time costs and maybe what the range, why there's a range being presented for the annual costs.
Yeah, certainly. So for the one-time costs, we're presenting a range just because there's significant variability between individual properties in terms of kind of the length of pipe that will be required, or any kind of plumbing requirements around where the plumbing is exiting the building. So that's why the range is provided there. For the capital infrastructure, at this time, we are providing a range just due to the kind of cost estimates we have to date and the conceptual nature of the design at this point. But those estimates will be refined as project design progresses, and we will be presenting updated costs to the community in early 2024.
Okay. A new question, this one about existing septic tanks. Is there direction at this point about what homeowners will have to do to existing septic tanks to be able to hook up to the new system?
Yeah, Vince, do you want to take that one as well?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I guess we could get Nancy from Island Health to chime in as well, potentially. But yeah, I think essentially with regards to septic tanks, what we would be looking for is assurance that no indoor plumbing from the household will be using that septic tank. So the septic tank would have to be decommissioned and left in a state where it would not be possible for it to be used again for treatment of wastewater.
Yeah, so typically what we would expect to see for an existing concrete tank or plastic tank, you know, they can be physically removed. You can dig them out of the property. The other option is to have them pumped out, break those tanks up in place and backfill them with sand so that they don't create potential risks down the road for future property owners.
Okay. This question, I think we've addressed it, but in just a recent question, but specifically asked about kind of when people will have to start paying increased taxes. So just clarifying that the cost will come to homeowners when their community collection system is installed and their neighborhood is being connected into the service. So it's connected to the introduction of service in their community. So I hope that addresses that question, but let me know if there's some clarification on that we can better address it. Okay, so Derry, the next question is about community collection routes north of the Royston Rex area. Is there discussion at this point about what a community collection route could look like in that area? So that's north of the Phase 1A section, and whether or not it might follow the Royston Seaside Trail or impact that trail or properties there.
Yeah, so we do have a conceptual design for the collection system for that area, and that design did show the route following the Seaside Trail. That said, I think through detailed survey and additional design work, we will be looking in more detail at that area and determining if there are alternate routes that may be better.
And then the next question is about cost and concern about costs coming in obviously greater than what is anticipated or estimated. So is there room that's been given for cost overruns in the project budget? Sorry, how much room for cost overruns in the project have been built into the estimates for annual cost to homeowners for connection to the system? So I think the question is there potential for the cost to come in greater than the estimated annual costs that are being presented at this point?
Yeah, so the costs that we're working with right now are Class D cost estimates, which have an accuracy of plus or minus 40%. So those are kind of the ranges that we're working within. As we move through the planning process and kind of update design with more detailed surveys, we will be, as I've said, updating those costs, and they will be kind of more, I guess, less contingency and closer to what people can expect to pay when the system is installed.
Okay, great. The next question is about traffic impacts during construction. Do you have a sense yet about whether properties will lose access, whether people will lose access to their properties while roads are being disturbed for the construction of the system? The question raises specifically some streets that are dead ends and don't have alternative accesses to them.
Yeah, certainly we'll work to make sure everybody has access to their properties. I don't think we really have those details yet in terms of kind of traffic control plans, but I don't know, Vince, if you have anything more to add to that one.
No, not at the moment. Those are details that we definitely have to consider once we get closer to construction in these neighborhoods and yeah, and look at development of traffic management plans at that time.
Great. Okay, a question about the grinder pumps. Do you have a sense of what the footprint is that is required for the infrastructure of a grinder pump on a property?
Yeah, Vince, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, a grinder pump chamber is typically about 1 meter in diameter. So all you would see above ground would be, if you're familiar with what a riser looks like on your septic tank, that green circular plastic piece that sometimes provides access to a septic tank, that's pretty much all you would see above ground for your grinder pump.
Okay, so this one is just seeking clarification about kind of where the cost is the responsibility of a private property owner and where the CVRD is doing the work. So the question as stated is, to be clear then, is the CVRD going to be doing the work for the connection from house to street, or is that for the homeowner to arrange? And then as an extension to that, is there any way, who will be responsible for any potential collateral damage to home or property during new sewer line installation?
Sorry. Yeah, so property owners will be responsible for the works on their own property. And so any kind of challenges with the installation of that infrastructure will be the responsibility of the property owner.
Okay. And so the CBRD's work, because it's on the road right of ways primarily, wouldn't have the impact on private property. Okay, great, thank you. I see a thoughtful comment here about a proposed alternative use for existing septic tank. So thank you for sharing that. Just acknowledging receipt, and we'll keep that as part of our summary and feedback of comments collected today. The next one is about the potential cost for phase 1B residents. Do you have a sense of whether or not the estimated costs that are being presented today might also be the same cost that phase 1B residents will see, or if it will be different because of the use of grants in the first phase?
Yeah, so the phase 1B costs will likely be different, but we are working to ensure that they will be as equitable as possible through applying for future grant programs or looking for partnership opportunities.
Okay, and we've come down to our last question that's posted right now in the Q&A window. We do have a few more minutes, so I'm just gonna let participants know if they have anything else that they want to see covered. Please feel free to drop in your question now, and we'll be able to get to it, but it should no others arrive. The last question is whether or not there is a wastewater metering system. So could outgoing wastewater be metered and users be charged accordingly?
Yeah, so at this time and kind of in the costs that have been presented, we're looking at a flat rate per connection for wastewater operations and maintenance charges.
Okay, great. All right. My call brought in a couple more little ones. So one is just going back again to that one-time cost versus the annual cost. So the question is a bit about how much people will actually be able to pay. I feel a bit like you've covered this one, but the one-time cost, the range here, Derry, is just because the properties are all so different, and each property would have kind of a different set of challenges or things that they need to address to be able to connect to that roadside connection point. Is that accurate?
That's right, yeah. So for example, a property that has a very long driveway or the house is set back quite far from the street would have a higher cost because there's more pipe required to connect.
Right. And so in this case, there is that $2,500 to $8,500 one-time cost that is specifically the homeowners to be able to connect to the roadside connection. And then there is also that annual cost that will be payable. So I hope that addresses that question. And then the last one is about Union Bay Estates. So is the system sized for Union Bay Estates to be able to connect in, and for any potential development of the Comox First Nation treaty lands as well?
Yeah, so as Lucy mentioned, both Union Bay Estates and the Comox First Nation are partners in the project, and the infrastructure has been sized appropriately to accommodate flows from those development lands in the future.
Okay. All right. And one more question just popping in. It asks about whether or not there will be a vote. I know it's got covered a bit in the presentation, but maybe good to circle back on before we part ways. Will there be a vote before this project proceeds, or will the CBRD be pursuing an alternate approval process or an AAP, or will the CBRD be able to move forward without owners voting at all?
Yeah, so a vote is not required for the project to proceed if the liquid waste management plan is approved by the province. So the approval of that plan provides the CBRD with the authority to move forward with the project and with borrowing for the project. I don't know, James, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Only, Derry, that the public engagement and public involvement in liquid waste management planning is what is so important, what really speaks to the input that we seek from the public. So so that when we go to the province with that plan and seek approval, the province can really understand that there has been public engagement and public feedback and input, and then that would allow the province to consider approving the plan. And then, as you say, we would not need to go to a vote or conduct an alternative approval process before proceeding.
Great, thank you. And just circling back to the one-time cost owner slide before we part ways, the question is just confirming that that 2,500 to 8,500 estimate is an estimate to cover the work that contractors, homeowners have to arrange to do. It's to cover that cost specifically, which I believe is yes, but I just want to double check, Terry, that I'm not misrepresenting there.
Yeah, that's correct. So that would be the cost that the homeowner would, potentially pay. Those are estimates for the work that they hire contractors to do on their properties.
Great. Okay. All right. And so with that, we've come to the end of our questions and just under our time limit. So I've reposted the slide that has some questions, has some ways that you can follow up to get more information. There's an email address and a phone number that you're welcome to contact, but that engagecomoxvalley.ca/sewer extension is a key outlet for you. It has some, obviously a bunch of background information, links to the map so that you can search your address. It also will have the recording of this webinar and the information that we've presented today. A reminder that we have in-person open houses also happening next week. And so the details about dates and times are also available here, but we encourage you to share that with family or neighbors to help share this information with as many people as possible. And then finally, there's also a feedback form on this Engage Comox Valley page that asks for feedback on some of the specific pieces right now that the CBRD is looking for public comment on as they work through further details and planning on the project ahead. So with that, thank you very much to our presenters today, to Derry and James and Lucy and Melissa and Vince for joining in, and Nancy for helping to answer questions. We appreciate your expertise and time here. And to all of our participants today, thank you so much for being here as well. I see a hand raised, James, so I'm going to pass it over to you before we say our goodbye.
Thanks, Colleen, not to interrupt, but I see there was one more question posted around if homeowners will be impacted with significant startup and annual costs, should they not have a say whether the project goes ahead? And it's similar to the previous question, I think, around the AAP and the potential for a referendum. The nature of liquid waste management planning and the process that is available for local governments, it requires us to undertake this public engagement. And I was just going to mention the open houses coming up on the same topic. So it is that public engagement which is so important for the liquid waste management planning, and on some of these very big and important topics that address public health, environmental health, some of the utilities, whether it be solid waste or liquid waste. Those are the processes that we need to follow to be able to put these very important utilities and services into the ground to be able to protect the environment and support our communities. So I hope that answers the question around the potential for a vote and why the liquid waste management planning process is so important.
Great. One final question snuck in before we say goodbye. So I'm going to call it after this one, but Derry, could there be access to competitive contractors for property owner hookups? Is that something that the CBRD could help coordinate?
Not something we've considered so far, but certainly an interesting idea that we can look into.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you. And as one of our posters shared, please attend a community open house next week on the 13th and the 14th, one in Union Bay and one in Royston. We look forward very much to seeing you there. And thanks again for your time here. Thank you to our presenters. And we wish you all a happy rest of your day. Thank you very much.